What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, once a month, I host online conversations, live online conversations for fathers and dads that is co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization, and Dove Men Care. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. You know, I like to have new friends on the show, but this gentleman, and I'm going to say this respectfully, he's an OG of the Dr. Vibe Show. He's an OG. He's been around for not a minute. It's been an hour. He goes back, but I'm always good to have him come back on. And we're going to be starting. I think we had started something like this before, but we're going to be doing it again. And I'll just parking lot for a second and just give a high level who we're talking about. Galen Bingham, founder and CEO of Kiln Coaching Consulting. He bakes permanent success into every client's work and life. Like that, Kiln, bake, you know, you like your food, you like your game, you get it. After earning a BS degree in business administration for Southern Nazarene University and an MBA degree from Rice University, Galen went on to award-winning career at Imperial Sugar, Kraft Foods, and the Coca-Cola Company. While in pursuit of the corner office, he took an 18-month developmental role at that company called Coca-Cola as an internal coach. That Coca-Cola journey lasted 8 years. Today, he is a World Coach Institute certified executive coach and a member of the Goldman Emotional Intelligent Meta Coach cohort. He hosts the Leadership Toolbox Podcast and co-hosts the International Masterminds on Blog Talk Radio and online video-wise. You need to check out that conversation, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. They bringing it, the heat. Him and his cohorts are bringing it with the book Think and Grow Rich, and they take it apart like no one else can. He has worked with more than 875 corporate executives, CEOs, and nonprofit leaders across the United States, Mexico, and England. I'm one of those people. And he is a member of the International Coaching Federation, 100 Life Coaching Design Network, Pair Coaching Network, National Speakers Association, Global Speakers of Federation. That's a mouthful. I'm done. But tonight he's here to talk about resisting the temptation to play small. Very applicable title at this time in the journey. Let us welcome again, Mr. Respectfully, one of the OGs of the Dr. Vibe Show, Mr. Galen Bingham. What is up, my man?
Man, we go back a long way, and I'll tell you, after hearing that bio, man, I don't know, but I think you slipped a couple extra pieces in there, man.
Length, man, length and depth. How are you?
Doing well, man. Quite busy, but trying to do good, man. Trying to do good for as many people as I can, because this life thing, this life thing is a lot more fragile than we like to make it out to be. And if you're not doing the right things, then you could be wasting your time.
I like it. Good. And family is good?
Everyone's good, man. Everyone's getting older. My daughter.
Thank you.
I made it 4 minutes. Come on now. My daughter is the smartest, the cutest, the most talented little girl in the whole wide world. But that little girl is 18 years old now, and college is imminent. And we're trying to figure this thing out, man.
Navigation. And how's your dear brother doing?
Everyone's doing well. Was We're all kind of pitching in and taking care of mom and dad who are getting older as well. But man, everyone's good. Everyone's really good.
Good stuff. I am very excited as always to have you on. And you got me with this conversation topic tonight, my brother. Talk to me. Where did this resisting the temptation to pay small come from?
Yeah, that's really what I don't know. It's twofold, right? So a number of clients that I've talked to recently, they all seem to be really, really professional. They're really, really good in their space. But when it comes time to really step into this thing that they've been developing, everyone wants to play inside this box that they've created for themselves. It's almost like they've created this container using the best information that they could come up with. But now it's time to step outside of that container. And there are a lot of things trying to keep them inside of it. So, they're wanting to play small. And I've really kind of done some homework on this, and there's a lot of things pulling against all of us to play small. There's a temptation to play small, to fit inside the box, to fit inside other people's perception of us, and that's really something that's on my heart, because I even find myself getting seduced in small, and so that's what I wanted to talk about.
Nice. Actually, two thoughts come up in my alleged mind already since you've talked about this. One, many years ago, I read a book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And the second thing, a real life story, just recently, and I won't get into too much detail, I was involved to potentially pitching an idea to a large corporation. And the person who gave me the inroads said, give him your send it. We sat on a call together. I only had 5 minutes, and I said to the client, I'll send my proposal to you. And the gentleman who gave me the inroad said, let me see the proposal before you send it. Okay, I said, all right. He's the person that gave me the inroad, and he said, whoa, you're asking for too much money. and the interesting thing is, my mentor, won't give his name away, has this philosophy of 3 asks. And always put your big, bodacious dream ask first. And this person saying, no, you should just make it. I said, well, I don't know what they're going to give me unless I make that big ask. Won't get into too much more detail. So I hope that this fits into what you're going to be sharing with us tonight.
It really does. It really does. I mean, we negotiate against ourselves all the time.
Oh, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, we negotiate against ourselves all the time. And the way that negotiation usually works is exactly what you described. This is what I think I want, but they'll never give me that. So I'm going to ask for something a little less. And that might be kind of embarrassing. So I'm not going to ask for quite that much because I really want to get the business. I'm going to ask for something even less. And before you even get to the conversation, you've given away all this value, and you did it to yourself, right? You're negotiating against yourself, and that's where most value is lost. Is in that internal negotiation.
I know that you're one of my turn people when it comes to emotional intelligence. Does this have any relevance with emotional intelligence that you were so well versed in?
Yeah. So I've started thinking about this topic, and it really does conspire a lot of things that I've done some really intense study on. I had the opportunity to study with Daniel Goleman, because Daniel Goleman is kind of like the father of emotional intelligence, and really building out the coaching arm of that organization, and really got to really understand what emotional intelligence is about. And I've really started thinking about what are the things that go into this temptation to play small. And it's all about what goes on in your brain, right? There is, and so now I'm going to hit you with some geeky.
No, it's okay. That's okay. You can break it down. And if I don't understand it, I'm going to ask you. So you do your thing.
Yeah. So let's talk just for a little bit about how the brain works, and this is what causes the temptation. And after I share with you what causes that temptation, I'll share with you the risk, what's at risk if you succumb to that temptation. And then we'll get into some strategies as to
Sure.
how you can avoid those temptations of playing small. But this is what causes it, and it's what's inside of your brain. The way that your brain works, there are several different parts. The brain is like the most complex organism ever created. I mean, if you think of any computer, a computer has nothing on the complexity of the brain, and we don't fully know everything that the brain does. But this is what we do know. The part of your brain when someone says, "Hey, I need to think about this. I need to plan," and when someone says, "Hey, use your brain," what they're usually talking about is the part of your brain that's called the prefrontal cortex. And they also call that the executive thinking part of your brain. So that's where all the concentration comes in. That's the part of your brain that you use when you're planning, when you're focusing, when you're paying attention. Anytime you call yourself using your brain, usually you're activating the prefrontal cortex. That's where all the smart stuff comes from. There's a, and that's really, really important, right? But there's a really, really small part that's called the amygdala. And the amygdala has really one purpose and one purpose only. And that purpose is to sound the alarm when there's danger around. And that's the fight, flight, or freeze. That's where that comes in, right? Because the amygdala is saying, hey, everybody shut down, everybody stop, all that planning you were doing, Mr. Prefrontal Cortex, you need to shut that down because there's danger around. Now, really, really important back in the days when we were all living in caves, right? If you hear these big footsteps lurking in the jungle, now is not the time to do some analysis to try to calculate how far those steps might be away from you, because you might get eaten in the meantime. So that's when the amygdala steps in and say, shut down everything. There's danger around. Okay. And that's the purpose of the amygdala. But here's the problem. Although we've evolved and we're no longer running from lions and tigers and bears, oh my, that amygdala is still on its job. And it not only identifies physical danger, it also identifies psychological danger, emotional danger, social danger, anything that might upset or make you uncomfortable. It's alerting you to shut everything down. Shut down all that planning, shut down all that analysis you were doing, all that goal setting stuff that you were doing, shut all that down. There's danger ahead. And so that's what's going on inside our brain. And so you've got this amygdala always telling you, look, you need to make yourself, you need to like calm down, play a little smaller. Don't make, you might want to have that $1 million contract, but there's a danger in asking for $1 million because they might say no. So you need to play a little smaller. And so that's what's going on inside your brain. And if you don't have strategies and plans put in place, then you're always going to default to playing smaller than what you really should be playing. The other thing that's happening inside your brain, and this is the last geeky thing that I'm going to share. The other thing that's going on inside your brain, we all think, we all believe that we are living life and we're taking in life as it's coming, right? And that when we make a decision, it's because we've assessed all of the information and we're making this incredibly prudent and sound decision. Well, research shows that that's actually not happening, that's actually a bunch of malarkey. Research shows that what we're constantly doing is we're making predictions about what's going to happen based upon what's happened in the past. So have you ever had an experience, Dr. Vibe, where you were driving from one part of Toronto to maybe another part of Toronto?
Yeah.
And So you're going this distance, but by the time you get there, you're like, oh, wait a second, I don't remember making any turns. I don't remember. I'm here. I don't really know how I got here.
Yep.
That's because your brain is constantly making these predictions, and you're not really always engaged. You're living off of these predictions. And that's very helpful, right? If you're needing to get from one
Absolutely.
part of town to another part of town, that's very, very helpful. But the problem comes in when your prediction is, boy, this is just not going to turn out well. I predict that unless I play a little smaller, this interaction isn't going to happen the way that I want it to play. So those two things happening inside your brain, which happens in all of our brains, that's really pulling against us. That's really making it difficult for us to step into what we're designed and who we're designed to be. That's what's at play.
No, and you know what? I don't have any questions because it wasn't too geeky for me. I made sense of it right quick. Question though, what, and it's maybe a hard one, but what percentage of people that, okay, just put it in your realm, that you've coached have this challenge of, for lack of a word, sabotaging themselves at times?
Yeah. I mean, interesting that you would use that term, because I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but I'd say all of us. All of us at time. There's a great book that I had an opportunity to meet the author and talk to the author, Shirzad Shermine, and he wrote this book entitled Positive Intelligence. And he actually talks about that. He says he takes this emotional intelligence and he puts like a different spin on it. And he says that inside of our brain, we all have a sage brain and we all have a saboteur brain or judge brain. And the sage brain is, go back to what I was saying about that executive function. It's very wise, it's very intuitive, it can make great decisions. But then we've got this judge brain that's constantly judging us and constantly sabotaging us. And pointing out all the things that could go wrong and all the things that we didn't get right, literally trying to they're sabotaging us. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to keep us safe, right? They're trying to make sure we don't get into any trouble. So they're reminding us of all the bad things that could happen because it's happened in the past. And so I actually get to, there's a strategy that you can put in place to manage those saboteurs, or at least your chief saboteur. But back to your question, I think all of us struggle with this from time to time, especially if we don't have strategies in place to manage it.
Excellent. I'm going to ask our producer if he can. The title of that book, I've given him the information, so hopefully he'll be able to put it up on the bottom of the screen as we continue on with the conversation. Yeah, it really. So each one of us has it, but how many of us realize that? That's
the question. Actually, the subtitle of his book is about how 20% of leaders and teams actually realize this higher level of achievement because
there we go.
Because
go ahead.
Yeah, they've been able to embrace this. They've been able to put strategies around trying to manage through this. But it's just really important. I found it's really, really important to, number one, understand what you're up against, understand how your brain works, because that's what we're up against. If you just continue to go on autopilot, this is what you're up against, right? And then number two, you need to understand what's at risk. Well, what's the problem with just going on autopilot? Well, there's two things that I've found that you risk if you just kind of let things go the way that they happen to go. The first thing that you risk is you risk growth, right? Because growth never, I'm going to say never, happens in comfortable places, right? If you think about exercising, if you go to exercise and you go to lift weights, literally what you're doing is you're making yourself uncomfortable, consistently, repeatedly, so that you can get stronger, right? If you think about running long distance, right? The way you train for a marathon is you increase the level of uncomfortability over a period of time so that you can eventually run 26.3 miles, right? That's how you get better, is by making yourself uncomfortable. If you want to learn to play the guitar, you're gonna have to spend some time doing it wrong. and
Hey,
you know,
it's just like people say, wow, like Dr. Vibe, you're this, you're that, you're that. Do you know how many times I've messed up to get here? Come on,
yeah.
man.
So
Like it says on the sports, come on, man.
so that's the first thing that you risk. You risk growth unless you're able to be uncomfortable going through this period of not being very good at managing this. The other thing that you risk is you risk authentic relationships with others and with yourself. Because you're constantly living inside this box, you're constantly living in this smaller version. Not only do other people not know who you really are because they haven't really seen who you really are, if you do that long enough and you do that well enough, eventually you forget who you really are, right? Because I've been playing this smaller version of myself, and you begin to convince yourself that this is all that I can do. Well, no, this is just all that you've allowed yourself to do. Those are the two things that you risk: growth and authentic relationships.
So I don't know if you want to tackle this point now, but I'm going to put it out there. Is this how this point come up, and tell me if it's relevant or not? Living life on the offensive versus living life on the defensive.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I like that. I like that. Because for me, that means living life in pursuit of something rather than living life as it comes and defending and in fear and trying to fight off and protect yourself against something. So yeah, I think that works. I think that works.
Excellent. Let's move on to the next stage of I love how you got everything as you're building up, going up the mountain here. So we're going up the mountain. So we're scaling. So I'm with you. We're going up Galen's Peak.
So yeah, so we've talked about what causes the temptations, how that's kind of built into everyone's makeup. We've talked about the risks associated with not trying to address those temptations. And the last part for me is, and this is where we can have a good, long, rich conversation.
Yes, please.
Strategies to avoid those temptations of playing small. So knowing everything that I just shared, what do I do, right? How do I avoid the trap of falling into this smaller version of myself? And the first thing we've already talked about is you've got to identify and almost give a name to your chief saboteur, right? You got to know, what does it sound like when I am challenging myself to play small, right? What does that voice sound like?
So let me ask you, for the person who's starting at ground zero with that,
yeah,
what are some best practices that they can find? What is my chief saboteur?
Yeah. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to journal. Now, I was not a believer in journaling. But over the past 18, almost 2 years, but 18 months specifically, I was really challenged to journal 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes a day, just journal what's been happening. How do you feel about what's happening? And literally capture those thoughts with no judgment, right? So no spell check, no grammar check, none of that. Just capture your thoughts. And then at the end of the week, if you just reflect back over and read what you've journaled, eventually you'll start noticing how you've been talking to yourself. My brother, you mentioned my brother earlier, another just smart dude, just smart for no reason. And like literally, I mean, just there's some facts are useful. I'm like, dude, why do you know that, right? Why?
you know what? It's overdue. We have to have both you back on. We did it once before. We need to have another tag team of you back on again. Absolutely. That was rich conversation and thought process.
Yeah. So, one of the things that he will tell you is that you've got to be willing to do things afraid. and you've got to be willing to really take a look at your thoughts. And if someone else talked to you the way that you talk to yourself, would you be friends with that person? And that's one of the things that we really dig into in this spot. So one of the other things that you can do to understand those saboteurs is talk to someone else, right? Have some conversations. Obviously, I'm going to tell you to talk to a certified coach, because we're trained at reflecting back what we're hearing. And it's always interesting to me when I'm coaching someone and they're telling me what they're trying to achieve, and they're telling me the challenges that they're facing. And I just play back to them what they've said to me. And inevitably, they always say, wow, well, it sounds so different when I hear you say it. Well, I'm using the exact same words you used, but now you're hearing it, right? And that's another great way just to understand what does that voice sound like? Who is that chief saboteur? And then I would also obviously recommend getting that book, Positive Intelligence. It just really helped me put language around the chief saboteur. And I actually gave my saboteur a name, so that when I hear that voice coming in my head saying, really, do you really think someone's going to listen to you? Right? Really? Right? When I hear that voice, I've given that voice a name. And you're gonna laugh. Don't judge me. Don't judge me.
No.
The name of my saboteur, is my chief saboteur, is Jethro. Okay. And the reason I came up with the name Jethro is from, I don't know if you remember or even have seen the show Beverly Hillbillies.
I know you're going to go Jethro Bodine.
Jethro Bodine. And so the reason I chose that name is because, if you remember, Jethro would always sound intelligent. He would always sound like he knew what he's talking about. But if you ever paid attention to him, he wasn't making any sense whatsoever, right? He just sounded intelligent, and he believed what he was talking about. And so I found that that's the way that my saboteur shows up, right? My saboteur is talking to me. He sounds intelligent.
Yes.
Right? It's like, it sounds like it makes sense, but in reality, he has no idea what he's talking about. And so when I hear that voice in my head, I'm just, I just say, well, that's just Jethro talking.
Well, and as you said at the beginning of this part of the conversation, naming it and identifying it.
Yeah. That's the first part.
Okay.
Naming it. The second part is I call it recognizing the setup, right? Recognizing those situations that typically encourages Jethro to come out, right? If I can just recognize, hey, this is typically when I start questioning myself. These are the kinds of situations where I typically start to wonder if I'm good enough, or these are the kinds of people when I interface with these kinds of personalities. These are typically when that feeling of insecurity starts to pop up. And when I recognize that here's the setup, then I can be on alert for, okay, when's Jethro going to come in, right? When's Jethro going to make his entrance? Because this is typically when he does, right? And I'm taking all of the power away from the saboteur. I'm a fan of quoting. I think I'm quoting him more and more these days. Quoting Mike Tyson, and it's just crazy. With all the education I have, I'm quoting Mike Tyson. But Mike Tyson said, you can never get knocked out by the punch you see coming. It's never the punch you see coming that gets you. It's always that punch that came out of nowhere that just does you in. And for me, if I can see that punch coming, if I can see those situations when Jethro usually comes in, then I'm more prepared to handle that.
Nice.
And then the last one, this is really kind of a throwback to one of my longtime mentors. He was actually one of my first mentors when I was coming up in the Coca-Cola company, a guy by the name of Stan Hutchin. If I've got any former or current Coke folks, probably former Coke folks watching this, he was kind of legendary. And Stan, you know, very cantankerous, kind of gruff guy. And if not careful, he'll scare the bejesus out of you. But one of the things that he said to a very, very young sales manager in myself, he would say, usually at the end of the year, we'd have to report out how did we do versus our plan. And then inevitably we would say, hey, I did all of these things, but this anomaly happened. This thing that we weren't expecting happened. And that's why I couldn't deliver this other thing. You know, the weather was bad, there were tornadoes, whatever the case is, there was some anomaly. And Stan would inevitably say, you know, the thing about anomalies is that one happens every year. So let's plan for an anomaly to happen and deliver the plan anyway, right? And so let's bring that back to this. We've got to plan for the anomaly. We've got to plan for things going wrong with our ability to live big. We've got to plan for something messing up that strategy and work around that. So with Jethro, I've got some plans in place so that when Jethro comes in, this is how I'm going to handle it. This is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to deal with it, rather than hoping Jethro doesn't come. He always comes, right? I just don't know how he's going to show up, right? He always comes. So I've got some plans in place to help me manage those situations. And that's what I do with my clients too, right? I give them, first of all, I help them articulate and name their saboteur. And then let's come up with some plans so that when that saboteur comes, you can still function the way that you're wanting to function from your prefrontal cortex versus, letting this fight, flight, or freeze amygdala come in and kind of slap you around.
It's interesting when you're saying the cortex and all that. It reverts me back to my old biology classes in high school, and I don't know. There was a part of the frog brain. So I don't want to sound gross here, folks, but I have to bring up the medulla oblongata.
Yeah.
And I'm going, is that relevant? Yes, I guess it's still relevant today. I'm thinking about the frontal cortex. I feel like I'm Dice and the Bunsen burner and all. Yeah, that's all that kind of stuff, you know. Let me ask, with what you shared with us, and how challenging is it for many of us to find our enemy this year?
It's not challenging. It's not challenging at all, but you've got to be willing to do the work.
But okay, so there's the thing with all that's been going on this year. How has it impacted your clients in regards to going through this process?
Yeah. So again, I mean, think about, where we started. We talked about how there's always emotion at play. Mm-hmm. There are so many things right now that's going to encourage you to get emotional. There are so many. Actually, I was talking to a really, really talented executive last night, actually. And she is like really, really incredibly focused on how to achieve her goals. She has set some incredibly aggressive goals of making in her business 6 figures a month.
Wow.
In each of her businesses. She's got 2 businesses. And so she set a goal for making 6 figures a month in each of her businesses. One of those businesses, she's already done it.
Wow.
Right. In the other business, she's just getting off the ground, but she's, got a track record. She knows how to do this thing, and she's amazing. But when we were talking, she was like, yeah, but I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to do that. And she almost started sounding like someone totally different, right? Because she was concerned about the economy. She was concerned about COVID. She was concerned about these other things, whereas, and she was operating from this emotional, fear-driven side. as opposed to that executive brain that created all these plans that was able to create at least one business that generated 6 figures per month. So it's like, we know what to do. And that's one of my core beliefs as a coach. My clients, all of my clients, they already know what to do. They already know what to do. Very often they just can't articulate it. And since they can't articulate what it is that they want to do, they often think, well, it must not be real. It must just be a dream because I can't articulate it. Well, you can articulate it. Well, I mean, you know what to do. The reason you can't articulate it is because the part of your brain that controls desire is not the same part of your brain that controls language. So there's a disconnect. And part of my job is to help you articulate it. The other part of my job is to help you focus on how to accomplish, how to articulate, and how to accomplish your goals in spite of your fear. I'm never going to tell anyone not to be afraid, because that's natural, right? There's a reason that you're afraid. But how do you accomplish your goals while you're afraid? That's the That's
a good piece. That's a good piece. That is a good piece. Coaching wise for you this year, good year?
I'll tell you, this has been the best year I've had. It's amazing because I didn't see this coming. I've got 2 businesses, as you know. One is a retail business, obviously severely impacted by COVID and traffic and just people feeling comfortable coming in for the kind of product that I offer. It's not ever considered an essential item. It's more of a luxury, more of a treat yourself type of a thing. So that's been impacted significantly. But the coaching and the consulting business has really taken off for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think every business is looking for answers.
No, number one is you're very good at what you do, by the way. That's the number one. All right. So now let's go. That's number 2. So start talking about number 2. Okay.
Everyone's looking for answers. And so that makes this thought leadership space that I'm in very, very appealing, very, very attractive. And then the second thing, or the next thing, is that all of the barriers, all the physical barriers that used to be in place, that people thought that they had, where they thought if you're going to be my coach, then you need to be sitting across the desk from me, right? If you're going to train my organization, you need to be standing in the conference room, talking to my people eyeball to eyeball. All of those barriers have gone away, and now we're connecting, on webcast, we're connecting on Zoom, we're connecting on all these other platforms, and I've got clients and colleagues from all around the world: Paris, France, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. It's like literally all over the world, because those physical barriers. Before, if you wanted me to talk to your team in London, you need to fly me to London, and it's going to have to be business class to go to London. Go to London, and so there's a financial element to breaking down those barriers that just don't exist anymore.
I want to take and come back to the title, Resisting the Temptation to Play Small. What was something that you were playing small in that you're not playing small anymore?
Okay, all right. So this is like vulnerability time here. I've been leading a major program with a client around racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this is something that obviously that I've lived for much of my corporate life. I've been Black for most of my life.
You better be.
For most of my life.
Well, come on. You don't want to put your parents in another state if you're not going to get straight with that. All right.
So I have experienced a lot of things that I have actually trained myself not to acknowledge, to kind of push them underneath. Never talk about how you feel about a situation. If a slight actually happens to you, then there's probably something that I didn't do to make the other person feel comfortable enough to deal with me the right way. That's the way I've managed that. And when you're in corporate America for as long as I was in corporate America, that's how you survive. That's how you go forward. You not only manage conflict, you actually try to avoid conflict, because if you get into conflict, it usually doesn't work out well. And so those were the traits. So I was literally training myself to play a little smaller in corporate America, and I got into these conversations on racial equity and leading this conference, or co-leading this conference for a client, and it was going okay, not amazing though. It was going okay, but not amazing. And so the managing director over the entire project said, Galen, you're saying the right things, but I feel like you're holding something back. Right?
Just out of curiosity, was this person melanated or non-melanated?
Non-melanated.
Interesting. Okay.
And she was saying, she was like, there's something not there. You're saying all the right things, right? But there's just something not there. And I need you to go deeper. I need you to be more vulnerable. I need you to share more of yourself. I need you to just come into this more. And when I first got that feedback, I was kind of upset. I'm like, I thought to myself,
who's this person calling me out, right?
You don't know me. Come on now. And the more I thought about the feedback, I really had to come to grips with, hey, look, I'm not in that corporate America box anymore.
Right.
And this is a conversation that really does require that I be a lot more authentic than I was able to be when I was in that corporate American situation. And after getting that feedback, responding to it, the past couple of days of working with that client, a lot more liberating. I think you're getting more out of it. I'm getting more out of it. And I think that that's an example of how, if you're not careful, you're going to end up convincing yourself that you can only be this big, you can only do this much, and the rules that others place on you, you will start to embrace them as yourself. There's one of my favorite lines from the book "The Miseducation of the Negro" by Carter G. Woodson, and I'm gonna butcher this paraphrase, but he says something about if you train the Negro to think that his rightful place is to go through the back door, if you don't provide a back door for him, eventually he will demand one, and if it doesn't come, he will create a back door for himself. And that just says that you can get so conditioned into thinking that you are supposed to be this small, and if you're not careful, you will never ever experience who you are designed to be.
Agreed. Great story, and congratulations on that. That's a huge win. I like to say yes to that. And just adding on top of it, folks, vulnerability is the new currency.
Yeah, I think the reason I think that that's true is because vulnerability leads to authenticity, right? It's a longtime pastor and a friend of mine, he used to say, and I think about this often, he used to say, instead of doing the real thing, we seem to be doing something similar to the real thing, right? Instead of really doing this, we're just doing something similar to the way this is supposed to be done. And I've got a couple of words that I'm really trying to own for 2021, and I'm getting a jump start on them. And the first word is a real word that you can find in the dictionary. That word is intensity. So I'm just trying to increase the intensity of how I live my life.
Galen, I love that from you, because I don't do New Year's resolutions. I do words for the year. And my word for this year, my major word was clarity.
Love it. Love it. That's an important
clarity. And I push that out to people, say, aren't you looking for clarity? Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be my word again for next year, because as long as I focus and put the energy on the clarity, if I'm not clear about something, that means I'm not supposed to go forward.
That's it. That's it. I mean, you can't go forward if you're not clear, right?
Well, how many people do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And it ends up a lot of times being a train wreck.
Exactly. So I'm embracing two words.
Okay.
The one that you can find in the dictionary is intensity. And that's basically whatever you're doing, do it. Do it in a big way. Do it in a way where you're either going to hit a home run or you're going to strike out, right? Like blaze of glory, strike out. But intensity. And with the name of my company being Kiln Global, that really does kind of resonate with me. Intensity, increasing the intensity. I in my morning meditations this morning, I ran across this quote from Gandhi, and it was basically, and again, I'm going to mess this up too, but it was basically saying, someone asked Gandhi what was his message to others in the world, and he said that his life was his message. Yeah. And if your life is your message, if your life is your message, my question to you is your message a noun or is it a verb? Right? So how can we make sure that our life is a verb, that we're actually doing what we say we're doing? So that's my first word, intensity. Now, the other word is not quite in the dictionary yet.
It's in the Galen dictionary.
It's not in the dictionary yet. But that word is meta persistence.
Oh, I like this. Go for it.
And
break it down.
Persistence, meta means that you're doing it with knowledge of how you're doing it, right? So you're kind of observing yourself as you're doing it. I was in a program where they asked me to be a meta coach. Yes. So yeah, Galen, we want you to learn the process of coaching and how we want you to coach, but we also want you to be aware of what you're doing, because we want you to share that with someone else. And so I'm borrowing that first part, which is basically short from metacognitive, but meta, and I'm marrying that with being persistent. And usually when someone says, well, I was just persistent, that usually means I just kept going, right? I just kept going at it. I kept getting up, right? And that's great, except that usually there's a blind element to that. And so I want to be persistent, but still being aware of what I'm doing, being aware of how this is working, so that if I need to make changes, I can. So that's my second word for 2021 that I'm starting on right now. And I'll petition Webster to include that word in the dictionary at some point.
Well, good stuff. Well, you know what? We'll probably end it off here, because Galen's always got a lot of things on the go. I'm trying to keep up with him, but Galen, as always, a pleasure. And for folks who are watching this live or on replay, or listening to this on replay, we are going to be doing a series of conversations with Galen he calls it the Leadership Toolbox. So he's pulled out one of the tools out of the toolbox, and we're speaking that we're going to continue it on for as long as Galen has time, as long as he can fit us in with all his clients around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, this is actually the launch of season 4, because I've got a podcast. So you can go anywhere that you consume podcasts, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or wherever you might find a podcast, and download the Leadership Toolbox, and you'll get seasons 1 through 3. And this is the launch of season 4. We're going to hit that really, really hard. And I'm also thinking about, and I'm playing with, I'm gonna just me and you, Dr. Vibe. It's just us talking to each other, right? I'm this other idea to come up with a second podcast. And that second podcast will be called Bourbon, Jazz, and Leadership.
I like that.
And so I might launch that one too.
Well, we'll discuss offline. That ties into another thing that I'm going to be involved in. I'm already involved in it, but I haven't spoken it to the world yet. But in the next, probably the next week or so, I have a few announcements of some things Dr. Vibe's been up to. But that title has the thing I'm talking about, folks. You'll get into it. I'll get into it a little more down. It involves food and drink. So it ties nicely into all of that.
There you go.
Well, good. Thank you so much, man. What's up? What's coming up next? What's on your plate next?
Yeah. So just try to close out 2020 strong. As I mentioned, the 2 podcasts that we're launching in the beginning of the year. And this is going to be one of the first episodes there. So they'll be able to watch that. And going to be relaunching and rebranding my Leadership Academy. So that's going to be some online courses that you can just kind of plug into at your own pace and help you get to where you're trying to go, help you bake success, permanent success into your work and life.
Wonderful. I could say all the places where you could find them, but if you're watching via video, they've been going across the screen all the time, but you can find him. He's got his website. He's on Facebook. His Facebook is Galen Bingham Inspires. He has his website. He has Kiln Coaching. There's GalenBingham.com. The man is everywhere. He's everywhere. He also hosts a program on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. The National Masterminders. Oy. I better mention that, or Ms. Ann is going to come after me from where she lives with her glasses. You know what I'm saying? You don't want Miss Ann. No. But I think one of the things we're going to see, we can get Miss Ann on here for a conversation.
That would be great. And
if you're finding love for Galen, Ms. Ann is at let's say, I regard Ms. Ann. People know who she is yet. She's one of the most dangerous people in America, and that's a good thing. I'm saying.
Yeah, she'll light a fire under you.
Oh, big time.
Fire under you, and
she does not play. Well, this is it. I'm Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations 2018 Innovation Award given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, once a month, I host Conversations for Fathers and Dads that is co-sponsored by Dad Central and Dove Men Cares. As I'd like to say some shout outs here. First of all, I'd like to thank Moi Fung, who has watched the conversation right from the beginning. And in the near future, you'll be. I had the pleasure of hosting her first Moi Talks earlier on, Life Beyond the Surface Talks last Sunday. More is coming. She's already asking, let's get Miss Ann. Okay, we will get Miss Ann if you're ready for her. That's what I'm saying, Moi. You got to be ready for Miss Ann. So you can find me. The best place is my website, thedrvibeshow.com. More epic conversations coming up. As always, I'd like to also thank BIA Media. And I'm going to close out with this. My standard close is live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. And I want to finish off with 2 extra things. And my mentor told me one of these things. One of my mentors, he said, throughout this year, he's noticed, and I notice, a lot of people are going into things with elbows up. They're wanting to smash. What would life be if we sometimes went into things with elbows down? Elbows down. Just a thought. And then, as always, remember to give yourself grace. Thanks for everyone who watches live or on replay, and thanks for everyone who listened to this on the replay. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. Walk good. And again, remember to give yourself grace. Bye, everybody.